there's one mistake that quietly drains your air, makes you fight your gear, and increases your risk of an unsafe descent or ascent. It's not taught enough in basic scuba diving certification courses, and is often a skill that many divers miss out on, as it can take time and practice to finesse. But we are talking about one of the most critical skills you can learn as a diver, and today we are going to smash through some barriers that could be holding you back from being safe and enjoying your future dives to the maximum. And no, it's not forgetting to turn your air on, though that's a good one too. We're talking about something even more overlooked. I'm Don. I've dove all over the world with many conditions, environments, and different gear and configurations. And I'm here to tell you that there is one thing that is absolutely not a set it and forget it skill in diving: wading. And yes, I've done a video on wading before. I'll link it above here if you're curious. But in this video, we are going to do a deeper dive into helping you debug and understand your wading issues, and more thoroughly achieve what pro divers call a balanced rig. Let's start with buoyancy and trim, and why that matters for every dive that you do. Buoyancy is the simple physics of whether you float, sink, or hover. It's all about upward force acting on your body, which, thanks to Archimedes' principle, equals the weight of the water you displace. When you're neutrally buoyant, you're not fighting gravity or floating up uncontrollably. You're suspended, able to move with minimal effort. Trim, on the other hand, is about your orientation in the water. Are you streamlined and horizontal, or are you angled with your feet and your head poking up? And further, I'll briefly mention balance as your ability to hold your buoyancy and trim underwater. Balance is where your center of gravity and center of buoyancy work together. If one is off, like having ankle weights or a tank that's too high, you'll constantly tilt, even if you're neutrally buoyant. Weight positioned in different areas may also make you lopsided in one direction or the other. To visualize all of this, I want you to see it as a pyramid of skills. Your buoyancy is the bottom, the foundation of that pyramid. Your trim builds on top of your buoyancy, and then balance is on top of that. If any of the lower layers are a little bit shaky, you can expect those skills to be a lot more shaky because the foundation is also shaky. This is the core of everything else you can do as a diver, and it will take practice and maintenance to keep it relevant. All right, let's zoom out for a second, because this next part ties the whole dive experience together. Today, we are going to focus on the basics of your gear and its effect on your buoyancy. But do stay tuned by subscribing, as I'll be doing a future deep dive video on trim and balance as well. I post weekly content to help new divers grow their skills, build confidence, and explore the ocean with curiosity and care. And while you're at it, smash that like button to help more divers see this video. And by the way, I have a newsletter for free monthly. Feel free to subscribe for that. The link is in the description below. Buoyancy is the foundation of your dive skills and comes down to a number of concepts that I covered in another video found here. But that video doesn't go into it enough on wading, which is the heart of what I want to focus on today. I already mentioned Archimedes' principle, but beyond that, I'm going to keep the theorem really light here. Ultimately, what I want to drive home is that when you enter the water with your scuba gear ready to dive, there are elements of what you wear that are going to be predominantly negative or positively buoyant. If something is neutrally buoyant, no problem. And there are some things like your scuba cylinder and your buoyancy compensator device, such as a dry suit or BCD, that can hold air and make positive buoyancy on demand. You've probably heard before that the thicker your wetsuit is, the more positive buoyancy it will have. This is true and is often the reason when you enter the water, you probably need additional lead weight. It's got to be placed on your person somewhere to give you enough negative buoyancy to sink below the surface. Of course, once you have emptied your BCD, your lungs, and potentially your dry suit, the goal is to just have enough negative buoyancy to gently submerge. It's not a race to the bottom. Your configuration, lights, reels, different cylinders, even the gas volume can all impact your buoyancy negatively. And of course, lead is heavy and very negatively buoyant. Without diving into the details about density versus mass, we'll keep things high level here without going into the physics. Let's learn about the dynamics of how extra lead can both help and hinder buoyancy. A common mistake, especially for new scuba divers, is trying to fix buoyancy problems by adding more weight to their gear, or shifting weight to the wrong places, or overinflating their BCD. When you're carrying too much lead, you end up pumping more air into your BCD to compensate. When you ascend a bit, this extra gas expands a lot, making you a lot more buoyant. This creates a yo-yo effect, where you're constantly adjusting, never quite stable, and always fighting to maintain your depth. Now, here's where things can go from a laxing dive to an underwater rodeo. The cycle goes like this. Excess weight makes you sink, so you add air to your BCD. That extra air shifts as you move, so you end up floating up or sinking unpredictably, forcing you to adjust again and again. This constant correction is exhausting. It leads to higher air consumption and is very unsafe, which we'll give to in a moment. Keep in mind, 1 extra kilo of weight requires 1 liter more buoyancy in your wing to compensate. If this is at 20 meters or 66 feet, it requires 3 liters of gas to fill your wing. If you ascend, you end up with 3 times as much buoyancy as you intended. That's why we need to be super conscious of our negative buoyancy, and instead of blindly opting for more lead, try to find a way to balance it out with as little extra weight as possible. If you find yourself negatively buoyant, the first goal is to drop some weight from your rig, but the key will still be having enough for the end of the dive too, which we'll get to in a moment. Other ideas would be to wear a thicker wetsuit or an added layer that makes you more positively buoyant overall. You could consider pieces of your gear like fins, cameras, and lights, and think about what they are adding to or subtracting from your buoyancy and swap gear out. Of course, using your breathing and BCD is a big part of this equation, but getting your gear weighted correctly will make that a lot easier. Now, we can start visualizing the combination of things that make us negative and things that make us positive to hit that net neutral buoyancy. In theory, you can do the math of all the negative buoyancy items that you wear and compare them to the maximum positive buoyancy that you can have with all the filled air in your buoyancy compensators or dry suit, or the positive buoyancy of your wetsuit. The best way to measure buoyancy of items, especially negative, is to take a luggage scale and fully submerge the item while keeping it tethered on the scale. This will give you its weight, or rather displacement, in the water. It's a little harder for testing positive buoyancy items, as you'd have to do the reverse and your weight scale will have to be water resistant. But at least you can do your negative items. Ideally, when you look at the maximum positive buoyancy of your buoyancy compensators, your wetsuit or dry suit, and any other positive items you have, and subtract all the negative buoyancy items, ideally, this should equate to 0 or close to it. And here's the critical key. Most divers can only comfortably fin against about 10 pounds or 4.5 kilograms of negative buoyancy to reach the surface. Things are probably fine as long as your BCD is working properly, which can give you that 30 to 40 pounds or 13 to 18 kilograms of extra lift. But what if that fails? This is where I want to stick to landing, as anything more negative than 10 pounds or 4.5 kilograms can have real negative consequences if your buoyancy compensator fails. It remains today one of the biggest causes of diver incidents, and it is entirely preventable if we learn to weight ourselves correctly. Don't let others tell you what your weight should be. We need to learn to master these skills as individual divers. This is where we, as divers, need to start thinking about our pieces of gear and how they contribute to buoyancy so we can build a balanced rig with our diving equipment. You can do the math with each piece of gear. Of course, we established how you could potentially do the math, and you can balance it out fairly well if you go through that work. But there's some more rudimentary tests that most divers rely on. These tests ensure that in the worst case situation, you'd be able to stop and hold a safety stop at 6 meters or 20 feet without struggle, and can swim up to surface at any time if your BCD or your buoyancy compensators fail. Picture a complete buoyancy system failure at the beginning of the dive or at the end of the dive. This is where having a balanced rig is critical. Our goal is to plan for that worst case scenario, so not if it happens, but when it happens, you'll be ready for it and dive again another day. We don't take chances diving. We're going to be safe divers and mitigate those risks so we can make it as safe and enjoyable as possible. To start, we test our supposedly balanced rig with a weight check that comes in 2 parts. But this first part will address the issue of being too negatively buoyant. Before you dive, you should always inflate your BCD and enter the water, get to the point where you're suspended, and perform this weight check. You don't need to do this every dive, just whenever you have a gear configuration or you haven't dived in a while. First, let the air out of your BCD slowly while keeping a good full breath in your lungs. If you're sinking before all the air is out of your BCD, it's probably a sign you're overweighted. Recreational divers should rarely be overweighted, but there are cases where technical divers might be overweighted, but we'll get to that in a minute. If you let all the air out of your BCD and can stay afloat with about half lung to a full lung of air, you're in a good spot. If you're needing to kick or fin hard or even sinking without air in your BCD and a full lung of air, then you're dangerously overweighted and need to take some negative buoyancy items off. If you're still floating, such as weights, remember that lead weight is super negatively buoyant. If you're still floating, you should be able to exhale and sink very slowly and gently to get below the surface. As your wetsuit compresses and the air squeezes out, you will generally start sinking a bit faster and need to add some air to your BCD to compensate. If you pass this weight check at the surface, there is a good chance, even if your BCD instantly fails, you will still be able to fin to the surface, which is where I want you to be. It's where you want to be. If you're at the surface of the water and already sinking with a full lung of air, if your BCD fails, you're in a serious safety risk. As mentioned, it's where a majority of the dive incidents take place. So that's why I want to be key for you. And it's something I truly hope experienced divers teach and new divers are thinking about. Taking the time to ensure you're not overweighted at this pre-dive weight check is a critical safety advisory, and ultimately you will experience a much more relaxed and enjoyable dive because of it. Once you can nail this and gently start your dive by submerging and descending down to your destination, adding air back to your BCD to keep your constant pace with your dive team or buddy, it's gonna be a real game changer. Now, let's briefly discuss a slightly spicier topic, but it does relate to your buoyancy and balanced rig. That's ditchable weights. Do we even need them? Experienced divers move away from ditchable weights, and often ditchable weights are more of a comfort blanket than anything else. If you master building a balanced rig and performing the proper checks, then in most cases, ditchable weights will no longer be needed during the dive, but they can provide an additional safety on the surface. This is because rescue divers, if you're unconscious or something, are trained to ditch your weights so they can get you to the boat or to the shore faster. But otherwise, they don't have a great use for on your dives. I like to think of ditchable weights as a solution to complex weighting issues and possibly technical gear where the only way to solve a balance rig dilemma is to explore ditchable weights. If you set up some, but not all of your weight as ditchable, you have the best option to using ditchable weight. It prevents shooting up to the surface if you would accidentally lose the weights, but still can help you a bit with establishing positive buoyancy if you need it. But the important thing here is it shouldn't be your first option to explore, unless you really feel it helps bring you some peace on your diving. By following the balance rig mindset and ensuring you're doing your weight checks properly, ditchable weight truly isn't needed in most cases, so keep that in mind. Many experienced divers usually will move away from ditchable weights in favor of proper weighting and a balanced rig. But to you keen viewers out there, you heard me say that there are two parts to this weight check. This is because the gas in your cylinder has weight, and once that cylinder is empty, it's going to be a lot lighter. It might even be positively buoyant, like the aluminum cylinders that are commonly used in warm water. An aluminum 80 cylinder can shift by more than 2 pounds or 1 kilogram as it empties, enough to affect your buoyancy noticeably. This can lead to out of control ascents, generally as you're approaching the surface for your safety stop. And this is bad news after you had such a great dive. You could need to have to fin very hard to stay at your safety stop. What could have been a relaxing safety stop now becomes a fight to stay down. This means you need more weight. I still have fond memories of one of my dives in warm water where at the end of the dive my aluminum was pretty empty. And you know what? I forgot my weight belt. Stupid of me. I thought I could dive no problem, but at the end of the dive, I had to fight for my life to stay down. It is just a safety stop, and I didn't have decompression, so really I could have just went to the surface, but I wanted to do the safety step regardless, so I finned, and I finned hard. It wasn't relaxing at all, and this is where this next check could have prevented me a very stressful dive. So let's talk about the second and last part of a weight check. After your dive is complete and your safety stop is finished, you can safely burn your air down to 500 psi or 40 bar by holding the purge valve of your second stage. You can use your octo or you can use the one in your mouth. Just turn it to the side and hold down the button and let the air out, whichever makes you more comfortable. You can also just do this at the surface, burn down your air and then resubmerge and see if you can hold a safety stop at about 10 feet or 3 meters. If you can rest there comfortably, then you're well weighted. I do want to mention that you shouldn't be doing this while you're on the dive, so wait until after your safety stop is done, and then you can do the second part of the weight check. Again, about 3 meters or 10 feet. And it's important, while you're trying to be stable, you shouldn't need to add air to your BCD or dry suit. You should be able to just breathe and rest and control your depth and stay pinned at that depth without any finning. If not, and you find yourself needing to fin to stay down and your BCD is empty, then you're too light. And the next dive, you should add some lead and repeat this test at the end of the next dive. You can gauge how much lead you probably need to add by how hard you had to kick down. If you're kicking down a little bit, I might start with just 1 kilogram or half pound or 1 pound. But if you're kicking vigorously, maybe double that. The beauty of this check is that it becomes second nature, especially when travel, gear changes, or those holiday pounds come to play. And as an added pro tip, make sure you add the details of your gear configuration and the extra lead that you had to put on into your dive log. Time and time again, whenever I change gear or have rental gear, or if I just need to reference the last time I dived in these conditions, I have it in my log, and that weight can be my baseline. I try to pick the closest gear configuration I had, look up the weight I used, and just start with that. That either helps me nail it on the first dive or close to it. This isn't a set it and forget it skill though. It's something you will have to do many times over your dives. You'll get faster at it, but I want to make sure you don't get complacent about it. As mentioned earlier, the risk of being too overweighted is real. It's not just a dive experience ruiner. This skill will take time and patience to master, and even factoring in all the tips we went over in this video, it may not be enough. I've learned from many fantastic and experienced divers and instructors as mentors over the years, but nothing can replace getting to know your local divers and finding a good instructor to mesh with as a mentor to help smooth out those buoyancy edges. Instructors like my friend Wouter, who helped me write and make this script and a collaboration for this video, would love to work with you in your local community to help smooth out these issues with a guiding hand. Make sure you shout out to him for his support if you're in his neck of the world. Otherwise, try and find a good dive mentor in your local community that you can learn from, and it will make smoothing this out so much easier. Oh, and by the way, if you're interested in Wouter's website, I have the link in the description below. And to that end, getting over the buoyancy hurdle, balancing your rig, and being able to weight check effectively will help you not only make scuba diving safer, but also improve your air efficiency, make you feel that natural relaxing effect that diving can have, and open the doors to more advanced skills as the fundamental crux of your diving skills. Don't let a few rogue lead weights bully you out of a great dive. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out this buoyancy video here that stays a bit more high level but gets into more of the skills that will help you master buoyancy. The more you know, the more you'll love and protect the ocean. Until next time.